Welcome, my friends. This is Maniacal Incorporated, and you join me for the first ever International Talk Like an Imperator Day, Ave, as they used to say. International Imperator Rome Day is an initiative, a fantastic initiative, started by the social streamers to boost the concurrent number of players for this game and to show some love for this game, which had fantastic potential on release but kind of lost that momentum. And so the idea is to get some new players in, to get the concurrent users up, and maybe to entice Paradox into thinking about making some new content. Now, I had been planning to take a look at Ireland in Imperator Rome at some stage during this year. I'm working on a different CK3 video at the moment, and the tribal mechanics for the Irish in this game are not the easiest to pick up straight away, so I'm not prepared to do anything. And what I'm going to do instead is take a very quick look at the map, to take a very quick look at Ireland in Imperator Rome, and to discuss the historical context and to point out some unique or interesting starts from a roleplay point of view, some tribes or some groups that might be interesting to start as. So here we have the map of Ireland in the start date of 304 BC, and we can compare that to the earliest historical map that we have, which is Ptolemy's map of Ireland from the 2nd century AD, so about 400 to 500 years of a difference. And we can see that the devs have pretty much included, in the places where Ptolemy indicates them, they have included tribes from Ptolemy's map. They've left much of the centre of the country and the west uninhabited and open for colonisation. I think when the game came out, first of all, there was only a couple of groups up here in the very northeast, and then the rest of the country was abandoned, so I'm sure there have been mods which have introduced tribes to all the rest of the areas. Now, of course, we're dealing here with the depths of Irish prehistory, solid, historical, written accounts of what's happening in Ireland don't begin to emerge until the mid-400s, with the arrival of Christianity and the arrival of a writing system, so our knowledge of what's happening in Ireland at this point in time is fairly patchy. Now, for some interesting starts on the island. Mechanically, everyone starts the exact same. I think they all have the exact same number of, I don't know what you'd call them, territories, counties, baronies. They're all the duchies are the exact same size. So mechanically, there is absolutely no difference whatsoever. They are all Hibernian and Druidic, and they are all of the settled tribe style of government. So mechanically, there's no difference from one group to the next. But from a roleplay point of view, there's a couple of unique, interesting groups here. In the northeast, we have the Darini and the Valenti. Now, if we take the Valenti and turn that V into a U, we have the Olenti. And we're not too far away then from the Ulla, and that is the name that is given to this region, and it is believed to come from the Valenti. And the Valenti and the Darini will, in one way, make shape or form, end up as the ancestors of groups like the Dal Naradi, the Dal Fiatach, and the Dal Riada, who will build a kingdom stretching from the northeast of Ulster across into bits of Scotland. The Darini claim as their ancestors Dara, and that's where their name comes from, and many of the legends of Irish mythology are connected with these groups. For example, Fáin Bó Hólana, the story of how Cuchulainn defends Ulster from Queen Maeve's armies invading from Connacht, and he defends Ulster single-handedly as the men of Ulster are struck down with the pangs of childbirth, the pains of childbirth, as the result of a curse. And Cruthor Macneasa, the king, is ruling in Aon Macha, where he and his great forces are rolling around in pain on the floor. Aon Macha, roughly around this region, somewhere around here. There's a belief that Aon Macha was in use from as early as the 4th century BC, so around the time that this starts, maybe even 700 BC, the 7th century BC. So already at the point in time that this game starts, Aon Macha might already be an ancient settlement, and that is where the Ulla will hold power from. Once we get into the historical era, however, they come under pressure from groups spreading out from Connacht, the Enail, pushing in this group, or what will become the Enail, and pushing them eastwards. And eventually, the Ulla will end up in just a strip of land over here, in the very northeast of the province. And it is believed that they still hold considerable sway as Christianity is being introduced. Possibly they act as patrons for St. Patrick, and that is why near Auanmacha he builds his great monastery of Armagh. But he is buried in Downpatrick, or Seoul, in the lands that the Dalfiathach and the major Ulla powers are driven into as the Enail continue to push in this direction. So Christianity and St. Patrick arrive at a time of tremendous upheaval on the island. But there is the Darini and the Valanti who give their name to the province, and the Darini who will claim to be the main, or who will be claimed as the ancestors of the main groups that arise in this region. Another interesting start is the Iverni, located down here in the southwest of the country. They are also known as the Éireann, and they will give their name to the entire country. And the name of the Iverni is still preserved in the local region. This here is the Iveragh Peninsula. And there is a belief that the Iverni were connected with the Darini, that they were descendant from a common ancestor, that they were all descendants of Dara. And indeed, the great king that is associated with the Iverni is Cúri Mac Dara, who lived on the Dingle Peninsula. The remnants of his great fortification still stand, with the legend being that he could set one of the walls of the fort spinning about a central axis by magic. And Cúri Mac Dara is a very important figure in the tales of Irish mythology. One of them tells of an argument between Cuchulainn, Laura Buach, and Conal Cernach as to which of them was the greatest warrior in Ulster. And they were sent to Queen Maeve and Allil in Connacht to sort out the debate. And they agreed that Cuchulainn was the great champion and that he deserved the hero's portion at the feast, but the other two refused to accept that. And so they returned to Ulster, and then they were sent down to Cúri Mac Dara, who came to the same conclusion, that Cuchulainn was the great champion. And again, Laura Buach and Conal Cernach refused to accept those findings, so Cúri sent them back to Ulster. Now, shortly afterwards, when Conal Cernach was in court, a green man, a big green man showed up, and he mocked Conal, and he challenged him to chop off his head. And then the next day, he would chop off Conal Cernach's head. And Conal accepted, knowing well that when he would chop off the man's head, he would kill him, and he wouldn't be back the next day. What a foolish agreement. And so he chopped off the green man's head, and the green man picked his head off the ground, put it under his axler, and said, "I'll be back tomorrow." And the green man returned the next day with no wounds on him, but Conal Cernach was not there. He had done a runner. Now, everybody seems to have been too busy watching Love Island because nobody told Laura Buach about this strange occurrence, because the green man again appeared a few days later, challenged Laura Buach in the same fashion. Laura Buach chopped off the man's head. The man put it back on his shoulders, and when he returned the next day to deliver the same blow to Laura, Laura was not there. And again, the same process is repeated with Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn chops off the man's head, and the next day, when the green man returns with his head back on his shoulders, Cuchulainn is there waiting for him. And Cuchulainn kneels and proffers his head to be cut off, and there are various tellings of it that the man misses, that the man faints 3 times at making attempts to cut off Cuchulainn's head. Cuchulainn gets angry and shouts at him, "I did not toy with you when the roles were reversed. Deliver your blow and stop messing about with me." At which stage, I bet you weren't expecting this. This is going to come as a shock to you. I bet you weren't expecting this. The man, the green man, turns into Cúri Mac Dara and reveals that this was all a test, and he shows that Cuchulainn is indeed the most deserving to be the champion of Ulster. And he has done this in a very public way. In front of all of the dignitaries of Ulster, he has shown the cowardice, the unsuitability of Laura Buach and Conal Cernach for the position, and he has shown Cuchullin's suitability. And that, of course, is the basis for the Arthurian legends of the Green Knight, which was made into a movie actually I think last year. But there are links. That story is, I believe, there are accounts of it from the 8th century in Ireland. However, the Arthurian legends are much later. There are similar stories in Wales as well. So Celtic mythology shares very similar aspects between stories, we'll say, in Ireland and Wales, which later get incorporated into some of the Arthurian legends. Now, Cuairi Mac Dara also commits forces to join with Queen Maeve during the events of Táin Bó Cholana, and then later on, after all the good that Cuairi Mac Dara did him, Cuchullin kills Cuairi Mac Dara in an argument over the division of treasure taken from the Isle of Man, taken from a raid on the Isle of Man. Later again, Queen Maeve and Cuairi's son, Luaid Mac An-Rí, conspire together to have their revenge on Cuchullin. They attack Ulster, knowing that Cuchullin will come to its defence, and they conspire to have a hag, Auntie Ethel from Baldur's Gate 3, offer dog meat to Cuchullin, knowing that he is under a geis, that he cannot have dog meat, he cannot eat dog meat. And he says as much to the hag, and she mocks him. Too good to accept hospitality from a poor woman like me, because of course he is also under a geis that he cannot refuse hospitality. And so he takes a piece of dog meat between his thumb and his index finger, he puts it in his mouth, and his entire arm goes dead. And he has to fight the battle with just one arm. And the events of Éadad Chon Cullen, the violent death of Cuchullin, describe how he ties himself to a rock so that he can fight to the death. And it is Luaid Mac An-Rí, Cuairi's son, who realises that Cuchullin has died when Crow lands on his shoulder and pecks out his eye. Luaid goes up and cuts off Cuchullin's head, and the hero light bursts from his neck, and it frightens Luaid, who drops his sword in a very convoluted and obtuse arc, because it somehow manages to cut his own hand off. Now, in the same way that the Ulla will be overtaken in the northeast by one of the newer groups, the Inail, pushing out in that region, the Iverni are the ancestors of the Kirkcallie, which will control Munster prior to the rise of the Onacht, and they will eventually be driven eastwards, where they will become the ancestors of the Dalburn that will rule Ossory and continue to rule Ossory in Crusader Kings 3. So groups like the Dalburn and the Dalfiatach that you find in CK3, they are the remnants of the groups that we can see here in pre-Christian Ireland in 304 BC. So there you go, a quick look at Ireland in Imperator Rome. Hopefully, International Imperator Rome Day will introduce some new players to the game and encourage some old players to think about returning to it. Please do support anyone that is playing or streaming or putting up videos of Imperator Rome over the next while to get the concurrent numbers of players up and to show Paradox that there is still a lot of love and a lot of interest in this game. I'm hoping to get a series out or to get some videos out at some stage once I get to grips with the mechanics, so be expecting that, as well as videos looking at lots of other aspects of Irish history in Crusader Kings 3 and beyond. So as always, thank you for joining me on this episode, and please, please, please remember, do not, under any circumstances, take dog meat from weird old ladies.